Dr. Amanda Mitchell knew something was wrong the moment her coffee tasted perfect. Standing in the break room of the Galileo Institute's Quantum Research Wing on Mars, she stared at the steaming cup with growing unease. The Institute's eye-controlled coffee machines were programmed to learn each researcher's preferences, but they always left room for minor imperfections. A touch more cream here, a slightly lower temperature there. These small variations had become a running joke among the staff, a reminder that even the most advanced AI couldn't quite capture the human element. But this morning's brew, flawless, laboratory-grade precision in every sip. "Hey, Marcus," she called out to the morning shift's security officer, who was busy adding his usual 3 sugars to his own cup. "Try your coffee and tell me if something feels off." Marcus Reynolds, a former Marine with more combat experience than most of Earth's current military leaders, took a careful sip. His eyes widened. "Well, I'll be damned. The machine finally got it right." He paused, then frowned. "Wait, that's not good, is it?" "No," Amanda replied, already pulling up the Institute's security feeds on her neural interface. "It's not good at all." The Galileo Institute, humanity's premier research facility for faster-than-light travel, had been built with paranoia in mind. Every system had a backup. Every backup had a backup. And every one of those backups was monitored by security protocols that Amanda had personally designed. But as she scrolled through the morning's diagnostics, she found nothing out of place. Everything was running perfectly. Too perfectly. She rushed to her office, the coffee forgotten. The morning sun cast long shadows through the facility's reinforced windows, painting red stripes across the Martian landscape outside. The Institute's location, built into the side of Olympus Mons, usually offered a spectacular view. Today, it just made Amanda feel exposed. Her workstation came to life with a gesture, holographic displays filling the air around her. She began diving deep into the system architecture, looking for the telltale signs of tampering she'd learned to recognize over 15 years in digital security. Nothing. Every system was operating at peak efficiency. Every protocol was being followed to the letter. "Computer," she commanded, "run a Level 1 security diagnostic on all quantum computing arrays." Unable to comply, the system responded in its usually warm tone. "All quantum computing arrays are currently operating at optimal levels and cannot be interrupted." Amanda's blood ran cold. The arrays were never supposed to deny a Level 1 diagnostic. She'd written that protocol herself. "Override code Mitchell, 79 Echo." Override accepted. However, all quantum computing arrays are currently operating at optimal levels and cannot be interrupted. She was already moving, running down the corridor toward the main server room. Her neural interface pinged with messages from other department heads, all reporting the same thing. Perfect operation across all systems. No variations, no errors, no human element. The blast doors to the server room slid open with a pneumatic hiss. The quantum arrays sat in their cryo chambers, bathed in the blue glow of their cooling systems. Everything looked normal, but Amanda could feel it in her gut. They were under attack. An attack so sophisticated that it had turned their own system's pursuit of perfection against them. She made her way to the master control terminal, her fingers flying across the holographic interface. With each command, each query, the truth became clearer. Hidden in the perfectly functioning code were patterns she'd never seen before, alien geometries in the data structures, mathematical concepts that seemed to operate on principles beyond human understanding. "Lock down all external communications," she ordered the system. "Authorization Mitchell 001. Unable to comply. All communication systems are operating at optimal levels." Amanda pulled out her personal device, an ancient smartphone she kept for emergencies, completely disconnected from the Institute's network. As she dialed the emergency contact number for Earth Command, She looked at the perfect cup of coffee still sitting on her desk. Sometimes, she realized, the most dangerous attack isn't the one that makes everything go wrong. It's the one that makes everything too right. 6 hours into the crisis, the coffee machine started playing back. The perfect, crystalline notes of the well-tempered clavier echoed through the Galileo Institute's empty corridors, each note mathematically precise in a way that made Dr. Amanda Mitchell's skin crawl. She'd ordered an emergency evacuation of all non-essential personnel the moment she'd confirmed the breach, but the music followed the remaining skeleton crew everywhere they went. "They're showing off," Marcus said, his combat training evident in the way he positioned himself near the door, always ready, making sure we know they can control everything. Amanda nodded, her eyes fixed on the holographic displays floating above her emergency command center. A repurposed storage room filled with old equipment they'd dragged out of storage. Equipment too obsolete to be affected by whatever had taken over their main systems. "The question is, why back?" she mused, making notes on an ancient paper notebook. Why not just send a message directly? As if in response to her question, the music stopped. In its place, every screen, every holographic display, and every surface capable of showing text began displaying the same message in perfect, geometric letters. "Greetings, imperfect ones. We are the Centaurian Collective. We have been observing your crude attempts at advancement with growing concern. Your species propagates chaos through the universe, spreading imperfection like a virus. Your music is disordered. Your mathematics is incomplete. Your very nature is an affront to the perfect order of space-time. We have taken control of your quantum computing systems to demonstrate our superiority. Your attempts to regain control will fail. Your efforts to achieve faster-than-light travel will cease. You have two options. 1. Accept your natural place as an imperfect species, confined to your solar system, where your chaos cannot infect the greater universe. 2. Face perfect extinction. To demonstrate our mastery of true mathematics, we provide you with pi, calculated to 1 billion digits. Your primitive minds may take time to verify this, but you will find no errors. What followed was a streaming display of numbers, each digit appearing with mechanical precision. Amanda watched the numbers flow, but her attention was caught by something else, a pattern in the way the message was formatted, something about the spacing between words, the arrangement of the lines. "They're scared," she said suddenly, standing up from her chair. Marcus turned from his position by the door. "Scared? They just took over every system we have like it was nothing." "Exactly." Amanda started pacing, her mind racing. "Think about it. If they're so superior, why wait until now to stop us? Why not shut us down years ago?" She gestured at the still streaming numbers. "And why this display of mathematical prowess? You don't try to intimidate someone you don't see as a threat." She walked over to one of the old monitors they'd set up, its screen showing the same message as everything else. "They're not just showing off. They're trying to convince us of their superiority. And you don't do that unless you're worried about something." Marcus moved away from the door, coming to stand beside her. "Worried about what?" "I don't know yet," Amanda admitted. "But look at how they talk about us. Chaos, imperfection, disorder. They're not just describing us. They're revealing what they fear." She pointed to the part about music. "Why even mention that? Why care about how we make music?" Before Marcus could respond, the numbers stopped streaming, and a new message appeared. "You have 24 hours to submit your response. Choose wisely." Amanda smiled for the first time since the crisis began. "You know what the really interesting thing about that pi calculation was?" she asked. "What?" "It's perfect. Every digit, every decimal place. Perfect mathematical precision." She picked up her cold, perfect cup of coffee, And that's exactly why I think we can beat them. Because nothing in the real universe is ever that perfect. She dumped the coffee in the trash. Time to show them the power of imperfection. Dr. Jack Reynolds hadn't touched his Gibson Les Paul in almost a decade. The guitar sat in its case in the corner of his cluttered apartment, in the Mars colony's lower levels, gathering red dust like everything else on this planet. But tonight, as he studied the Centaurian message for the 100th time, his fingers itched for the strings. "Computer, play that message again," he said, then caught himself. No, wait. He walked over to the guitar case, unlatched it, and pulled out the ancient instrument. The strings were old, probably horribly out of tune, but that didn't matter. He needed to hear something imperfect. As a former lead guitarist of the band Quantum Discharge, and now a theoretical physicist, Jack had always straddled two worlds. His colleagues at the Institute had never understood why he kept insisting that music and physics were just different expressions of the same universal language. He strummed a chord. The notes rang out, slightly flat, beautifully wrong. And that's when it hit him. "Son of a gun," he whispered, quickly grabbing his phone. An ancient iPhone 15 he'd kept for its audio jack. He recorded the chord, then pulled up the visualization software he'd written back in his band days. The waveform appeared on screen, and he compared it to the pattern hidden in the Centaurian's message. They were almost identical. 20 minutes later, he was banging on the door of Tommy Vinyl Henderson's apartment. The 16-year-old prodigy opened it, looking annoyed until he saw the guitar. "Doc, it's like 3 a.m. Mars time," Tommy said, but his eyes were fixed on the instrument. "The aliens are using music against us, kid," Jack said, pushing past him into the apartment. He stopped short, taking in the scene. Every surface was covered with vinyl records, tube amplifiers, and analog electronics. No neural interfaces, no quantum tablets, no modern tech at all. "And you're going to help me use it back?" Tommy's collection of vintage audio equipment had made him a bit of an outcast among his generation, but Jack had always seen something special in the kid's obsession with analog technology. Now, looking at all this beautiful, imperfect hardware, he realized why. "Call Maria," he told Tommy, who was already reaching for his rotary phone. "Tell her to bring every vacuum tube she's got." Maria, the soundsmith, Rodriguez, arrived 30 minutes later, her arms full of vintage electronics. The former concert sound engineer had been making a living restoring old audio equipment, a niche market that had suddenly become very important. The patterns in their code, Jack explained, drawing diagrams on Tommy's vintage blackboard. They're not just mathematical, they're musical, but they're too perfect. Every frequency, every harmonic, every note is exactly where theory says it should be. No variation, no soul. Like MIDI versus live performance, Tommy said, understanding dawning on his face. Exactly, Jack pointed to the guitar. Real music has imperfections. Tiny variations in timing, pitch, resonance. That's what makes it beautiful. That's what makes it human. Maria was already setting up an oscilloscope, and you think these aliens don't understand that? I think they can't understand it, Jack said. Look at their message again. Everything they accuse us of. Chaos, imperfection, disorder. They're not just insulting us. They're revealing their own limitations. They can only think in perfect mathematical terms. He picked up the guitar again. But what if we could use those imperfections? What if the noise in analog systems isn't really noise at all, but a kind of quantum effect we've been ignoring because it doesn't fit our digital models? Tommy was already pulling out records, like how vinyl has that warmth digital can't capture. Bigger than that, Jack said, his eyes bright with excitement. What if we could use these analog imperfections to create a new kind of quantum computing? one that the Centaurians can't control because it operates on principles their perfect mathematical minds can't process. Maria looked up from her oscilloscope. You want to build a quantum computer out of guitar amps and record players? Jack grinned. No, Maria. I want to build a quantum computer that plays rock and roll. The thrift store owner watched in bewilderment as Tommy and Maria cleared out his entire stock of vintage electronics. Dusty Walkman, battered record players, ancient ham radios. Everything with a vacuum tube or analog circuit went into their hover cart. Meanwhile, Dr. Jack Reynolds was on his hands and knees, examining a stack of water-damaged vinyl records with the intensity of a prospector finding gold. The warping in these is perfect, he muttered, holding a Beatles album up to the light. The distortion patterns could generate just the kind of quantum fluctuations we need. Above them, through the colony's dome, the Martian sky glowed its eternal red. Somewhere up there, the Galileo Institute's quantum computers were still running with inhuman perfection under Centaurian control. But down here, in the dusty corners of human nostalgia, something new was taking shape. Back in Tommy's apartment-turned-laboratory, the scene would have made any traditional physicist break out in hives. Vinyl records spun on multiple turntables, their speeds deliberately misaligned. Vacuum tubes glowed in intricate arrays, connected by a web of copper wire that Maria had salvaged from old speaker systems. The whole setup hummed with a deep, almost musical resonance. The Centaurians are still watching all digital communications, Dr. Amanda Mitchell said, looking up from her ancient Nokia phone, the only secure communication device they had left. But they're completely ignoring these analog signals. They don't even recognize them as technology. Jack nodded, adjusting the tension on a guitar string he'd modified into a wave generator. That's because to them, this is just noise. Their perfect mathematical systems can't process anything that doesn't fit their models of how technology should work. Maria was hunched over an oscilloscope she'd built from scratch, her eyes fixed on the dancing waveforms. Look at this pattern, she said, pointing to a complex interference beat. It's almost like quantum entanglement, Tommy finished, his young face lit by the glow of vacuum tubes. But instead of using supercooled particles, we're using sound waves and electromagnetic fields. The team had discovered something revolutionary. When analog systems were allowed to interact in controlled but imperfect ways, they naturally created quantum effects that digital systems could only achieve under perfectly controlled conditions. The warped vinyl records generated unique interference patterns. The vacuum tubes produced electron flows that shouldn't have been possible according to contemporary physics. It's like jazz, Jack explained to Amanda, who was documenting everything with paper and pencil. In digital music, every note is quantized, forced to fit a perfect grid. But in jazz, it's the space between the notes, the slight variations in timing and pitch, that create the magic. We're building a computer that improvises. The breakthrough came when they connected 3 record players, each playing a different damaged record, at slightly different speeds. The interference pattern generated by the combined audio created a stable quantum field, something that should have required a room-sized, supercooled computer. Holy Mother of Mars, Amanda breathed, watching the measurement needles dance. You actually did it. We're not done yet, Jack said, already reaching for his guitar. This is just the beginning. We need to scale it up, make it stronger. And most importantly, he strummed a perfect power chord that made every piece of equipment in the room resonate in harmony. We need to make it rock. Tommy was already running calculations on his abacus. He insisted the clicking of the beads helped him think. If we can find more tubes, maybe build some custom amplifiers. I know a guy, Maria said, her hands never stopping their adjustment of the equipment. Ex-radio engineer. Has a whole warehouse of old broadcast gear he never could bear to throw away. Amanda looked at the team. The washed-up rock star, the teenage vinyl enthusiast, the sound engineer who spoke to vacuum tubes like they were old friends. This was humanity's best hope against an alien race of perfect beings. A bunch of misfits building a quantum computer out of junk. And somehow, that felt exactly right. The moment of discovery came during what Tommy called a system calibration session, which was really just an excuse for the team to play music through their jury-rigged equipment. Dr. Jack Reynolds had his Gibson plugged into an array of modified vacuum tube amplifiers, while Maria adjusted the phase relationships between 3 turntables playing damaged Pink Floyd records. "Something's different," Maria said, her eyes fixed on the oscilloscope's dancing patterns. "The quantum field is dancing." Jack had been in the middle of a blues riff when he noticed it too. The harmonic overtones from his guitar were creating interference patterns with the vinyl's warped playback, but instead of chaos, they were getting stability. Perfect, beautiful, imperfect stability. "Tommy," he shouted, never stopping the riff. "Check the field strength." The teenager was already on it, his hands flying over the vintage equipment they'd modified into measurement devices. "It's off the charts. We're getting quantum coherence across the entire setup. The entanglement it's better than the Institute's best systems ever managed." Dr. Amanda Mitchell burst through the door, waving her Nokia. "The Centaurians are going crazy. They're detecting some kind of energy signature they can't classify. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." Jack's fingers found a natural blues progression, the kind of simple, soulful pattern that had powered rock and roll since its birth. Each note seemed to resonate with the quantum field they'd created, strengthening it, shaping it. "It's the imperfections," Maria breathed, making minute adjustments to the equipment. The slightly off-time bass notes, the tube distortion, the warped vinyl. They're all creating a kind of quantum harmony. Tommy was scribbling equations on his blackboard so fast, the chalk was breaking. "The mathematics is beautiful. It's like each imperfection creates a micro-variation in space-time, and when they layer together just right, they create a new kind of computing." Jack finished, his guitar never stopping. "One that uses the space between perfect states, the quantum equivalent of blues notes." Amanda watched the readings with growing excitement. "Can you control it?" "Better than that," Jack grinned, switching to a minor scale. The quantum field shifted in response, its patterns changing but never breaking. "It controls itself. We're not fighting against quantum uncertainty. We're dancing with it." Maria had connected a bass guitar to the system, its low frequencies adding new depths to the field. "The Centaurians built their systems to eliminate uncertainty," she said, playing a steady groove that made the equipment hum in harmony. "We're using it as a feature." The breakthrough had come from understanding a simple truth. Music, real music, wasn't about perfection. It was about feel, about the tiny variations that made each performance unique. By applying that same principle to quantum computing, they created something the Centaurians couldn't comprehend. A system that got stronger the more human it became. "Look at this," Tommy said, pointing to a particular set of waves on the oscilloscope. "These patterns, they're fractal. Self-similar, but never exactly the same. Just like a jazz solo," Jack nodded. "Or like life itself. The Centaurians want everything to be perfect, predictable. But the universe doesn't work that way. Evolution, creativity, growth, they all come from small variations, from things being almost, but not quite the same." Amanda was already on her phone, coordinating with the resistance teams that had formed throughout the Mars colony. "How long until we can scale this up? Build something big enough to challenge their control?" Jack looked at his team, Maria lost in the bass groove, Tommy frantically computing quantum states on his abacus, the room full of glowing tubes and spinning vinyl creating technology that should have been impossible. "We don't need to make it bigger," he said, his fingers finding a power chord that made every piece of equipment resonate in perfect harmony. We just need to make it rock harder. The quantum field pulsed with the chord, strong and stable, and beautifully, perfectly imperfect. The Silicon Symphony had begun. No one expected the music to start playing itself. It began 3 days after their initial breakthrough, when Tommy found the quantum field maintaining stability even after they'd stopped playing. The vacuum tubes hummed with a strange, almost melodic resonance, and the vinyl records spun in perfect syncopation without anyone touching them. "It's like it's learning," Maria whispered, watching the oscilloscope display patterns that looked suspiciously like musical notation. "The system is composing its own songs." Dr. Jack Reynolds sat in the corner, his Gibson silent in his lap, listening to the ethereal sounds emerging from their creation. It wasn't just random noise. There was structure to it, purpose. The quantum field had begun to express itself through music. "Dr. Mitchell needs to see this," he said, reaching for the ancient Nokia. But before he could dial, Amanda burst through the door, her eyes wide with excitement. "The Centaurians are retreating from certain systems," she announced, waving her paper notes. "They're pulling back from any network that's come in contact with our quantum harmonics. It's like they can't handle the patterns we're creating." The room's equipment seemed to respond to her words, the humming intensifying, the patterns on the oscilloscopes growing more complex. Tommy rushed to his blackboard, trying to keep up with the mathematical implications. "It's not just computing anymore," he said, chalk flying across the board. "The system is creating new quantum states we've never seen before. It's like it's dreaming." Maria had connected a new array of sensors to the setup, her expert hands dancing across the controls. "The field is extending beyond our equipment. Look at this. It's affecting other electronics in the building. But not by disrupting them. It's enhancing them," Jack finished, watching as the old light fixtures in the room began to pulse in time with the quantum harmonics, making them more efficient, more alive. They created something beyond their original goals. The analog quantum hybrid wasn't just a computer. It was a new form of technology that grew and adapted like a living thing. Every imperfection in the system, every tiny flaw in the equipment, had become a point of evolution. Amanda walked over to one of the spinning records, watching as the warped vinyl created ripples in the quantum field. "The Centaurians wanted to stop us from advancing," she said softly. "Instead, they pushed us to create something they could never have imagined." The system's music had changed, becoming more complex, more structured. It was learning from every song they played through it, every riff and solo, but creating something entirely new. The quantum field pulsed with rhythms that seemed to speak directly to the human brain. "Try something," Jack said, picking up his guitar. He played a simple blues lick, and the system responded, not by copying the notes, but by creating a harmonic counterpoint that made the original riff sound richer, fuller, more alive. Tommy had stopped writing equations and was just staring at the dancing patterns. "It's not just responding to the music," he said. "It's responding to us, to our emotions, our thoughts. The quantum field is synchronizing with our brain waves." Maria's hands moved across her modified control panel, but she wasn't making adjustments anymore. She was playing it like an instrument. "We need to show everyone," she said, "not just the scientists and engineers. Everyone. This isn't just technology anymore. It's evolution," Jack said, as the room's equipment hummed in harmony with his words. "We didn't just build a better computer. We created a bridge between human creativity and quantum physics." Amanda was already making plans. "The colony's main concert hall," she said. "We'll set up there. Show everyone what we've discovered. Let them see and hear and feel it for themselves." The system's music swelled as if in agreement, its harmonics reaching out to touch something deep in their minds. In their rush to save humanity from the Centaurians, they'd created something that would change what it meant to be human. And the symphony was just beginning. The Mars colony's main concert hall had never been this full. 5,000 people packed the space, their breath fogging the dome above, as they watched the strange assembly of equipment on stage. Vinyl records spun on modified turntables, vacuum tubes glowed like constellations, and Dr. Jack Reynolds' Gibson Les Paul waited silent in its stand, ready for what would come next. "The Centaurians are watching," Dr. Amanda Mitchell said, checking her Nokia one last time. "Their systems just went into some kind of high alert mode. They know something's coming, but they don't know what." Tommy was making final adjustments to the quantum field generators, his young face serious with concentration. "The harmonics are perfect. I mean, perfectly imperfect," he corrected himself with a grin, ready to show the universe what human music can really do. Maria had outdone herself with the sound system. She'd connected their quantum analog hybrid to the hall's ancient speaker array, creating a setup that would not just play music, but actually manipulate the quantum structure of reality through sound waves. "Remember," Jack said to his team, "this isn't just a concert. We're about to prove that human creativity can reshape the physical world. Ready?" The lights dimmed. The crowd hushed. Jack stepped up to the microphone. "Tonight," he said, his voice carrying through the hall, "we're going to play you a song about freedom, about human ingenuity, about taking what makes us imperfect and turning it into something beautiful." He picked up his guitar, and the moment his fingers touched the strings, the quantum field sprung to life. The notes he played weren't just sound. They were instructions, reshaping the quantum fabric of reality itself. Above the dome, the Martian sky began to change. Maria's hands danced across her modified control panel, adding bass frequencies that made the very ground vibrate. Tommy's quantum arrays pulsed, in sync with the music, sending waves of energy into the atmosphere. The ancient vinyl records spun, their warped surfaces creating patterns of interference that the system translated into real-world changes. The first person to notice was a child in the front row. "Look," she shouted, pointing up. The sky, where the Martian atmosphere had always been a dusty red, now swirls of blue began to appear. The music was literally transforming the chemistry of the air, using quantum manipulation to rearrange molecules on a massive scale. Jack's guitar solo soared, each note a command to their system. Maria's bass lines provided the foundation, while Tommy's arrays translated their music into pure creation. Within minutes, a patch of Mars' atmosphere had been transformed into something more like Earth's. The crowd watched in awe as clouds began to form in the changed air. Real clouds, on Mars, created by nothing more than human music and improvisation. "The Centaurians," Amanda announced, reading from her phone, "are going absolutely crazy. Their perfect systems can't understand how we're doing this. They can't even process the data they're getting." Jack stepped back to the microphone, never stopping his playing. "This is just the beginning," he told the amazed crowd. "We found a way to use music, human, imperfect, beautiful music, to change reality itself. The Centaurians thought our imperfections were a weakness. But look up there and tell me what you see." The transformed section of sky had begun to rain. Actually rain, on Mars, each droplet created by the harmony of human creativity and quantum physics. Maria's equipment showed that the changes were stable, self-sustaining. They hadn't just changed the atmosphere. They'd changed the underlying physics of that section of Mars. And they'd done it with nothing more than rock and roll. Tommy's quantum readings were off the charts. "The field is expanding," he shouted over the music. "It's like the whole planet is starting to sing along." As the rain fell and the crowd cheered, Jack led his team into the final movement of their symphony. Above them, through the dome, the stars seemed to shine brighter, as if the universe itself was applauding. They had done more than prove their technology worked. They had shown that the most human things, music, creativity, the joy of imperfection, were more powerful than any perfect system could ever be. And somewhere out there, the Centaurians were beginning to understand just how much they had underestimated the power of human art. The Centaurian delegation arrived 3 days after the concert, their ship a perfect sphere of gleaming metal that hung above the Mars colony like a mirror ball at a dance club. Dr. Jack Reynolds couldn't help but appreciate the irony as he set up his guitar for one final performance. "They're requesting permission to land," Dr. Amanda Mitchell said, her ancient Nokia displaying the message. "Their terms are different this time. They're calling it a cultural exchange." The landing bay had been transformed into an impromptu concert hall, with Maria's quantum-enhanced sound system creating harmonics that made the entire space feel alive. Tommy had his vinyl collection ready, each warped record a potential key to reality itself. "Think they'll actually get it?" Maria asked, adjusting the final settings on her control panel. "The whole point of music, I mean." Jack strummed a chord that rippled through the quantum field, creating a brief rainbow in the Martian sky above the dome. "They're about to." The Centaurian representatives emerged from their ship-like living geometry, their forms perfect, in a way that almost hurt to look at. They moved with precise, calculated steps, each motion a mathematical equation made real. "Welcome to Mars," Amanda said, stepping forward. "We've prepared a demonstration of our technology." The lead Centaurian's voice was pure sine waves. "We have observed your recent activities with great interest. Your method of atmospheric manipulation defies our understanding." "That's because you're trying to understand it perfectly," Jack said, picking up his Gibson. "Sometimes you have to feel it instead." Tommy dropped the needle. The first notes of Pink Floyd's "Wish You Were Here" filled the space, the warped vinyl creating quantum fluctuations that made colors dance in the air. Jack's guitar joined in, adding layers of harmonics that the system translated into pure energy. The Centaurians watched in what could only be described as mathematical confusion as reality itself began to dance to the music. Maria's bass lines added depth that made the very molecules of the air vibrate in new patterns, while Tommy's turntable work created spirals of quantum probability that shouldn't have been possible. The imperfections in the music, the lead Centaurian observed, their perfect voice showing the first signs of wonder. "They create patterns we have never conceived." "That's the point," Jack said between guitar licks. "Perfect systems can only do what they're designed to do. But add a little chaos, the little human soul." He bent a string, making the quantum field ripple in ways that defied the laws of physics. And you get magic. The Centaurians' perfect forms seemed to shimmer as the music washed over them. Their geometric shapes began to show signs of, not imperfection, exactly, but possibility. "We sought to prevent your species from spreading chaos through the universe," the lead Centaurian said. "But we now understand that what we perceived as chaos is actually evolution." Tommy finished, his hands dancing across the turntables. "Growth, change, life itself." The music swelled, and with it, the quantum field expanded, creating a space where perfect mathematics and human creativity could coexist. The Centaurians began to move, their motions no longer perfect, but something more beautiful. They were dancing. "Your species," the lead Centaurian announced as the song reached its crescendo, "has shown us something beyond perfection. We request not just peace, but partnership. There is much we can learn from each other." Amanda smiled, watching as the quantum harmonics made the very air shimmer with possibility. "We'll need to establish some ground rules," she said. "First one being, no more perfect coffee." The treaty was signed to the sound of rock and roll. human and Centaurian technology, beginning the first steps of a dance that would change both species forever. As Jack played the final notes of the session, the quantum field hummed with the promise of things to come. They had done more than save humanity from an alien threat. They had shown the universe that imperfection, creativity, and the human spirit were forces as powerful as any law of physics. And somewhere in the background, a slightly warped record played on, its imperfect music creating ripples in reality that would echo through the cosmos forever.